Stop whatever you are doing and look at the map of the world, because the reality you knew 48 hours ago has been incinerated. We are not witnessing a drill, a simulation, or a piece of minor geopolitical speculation that will be forgotten by tomorrow's headlines. What has just transpired represents the most catastrophic single strategic event in the history of the modern world. An event so irreversible and devastating that every government on Earth is currently in an emergency session, finding no comfortable answers to the abyss they are staring into. Russia has officially transferred 1,000 RS-28 Sarmat nuclear missiles to Iran. Say that number out loud, and let it occupy the full space it deserves. 1,000. Not a squadron, not a regiment, but a massive arsenal of the most destructive weapons ever manufactured by human civilization. Each of these missiles carries a payload capable of erasing a country the size of France from the map. Each one travels at hypersonic velocity along trajectories that no defense system on Earth was designed to intercept. As we speak, these weapons are sitting inside hardened Iranian launch facilities, pointed outward at a world that has run out of time to pretend the old rules still apply. The Satan II is no longer just a Russian threat, it is an Iranian reality. Israel has issued a chilling 11-word ultimatum. Iran has 48 hours to stand down or face total destruction. The clock is ticking, the world is trembling, and the margin for miscalculation has never been smaller. To understand why the Pentagon and Tel Aviv are in a state of pure, unadulterated panic, we must break down the technical reality of the RS-28 Sarmat, known to NATO by the terrifying designation Satan II. This is not just another missile. It is a weapon designed specifically to make American missile defense irrelevant. The Sarmat carries a staggering throw weight of approximately 10 metric tons. This massive payload capacity allows it to carry between 10 and 15 independently targetable re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs, per missile. Each of these warheads can be directed to a separate target within a strike zone. Consider the operational reality for a moment. A single Sarmat launch from Iranian territory could simultaneously target Tel Aviv, Haifa, Beersheva, the Dimona nuclear facility, Nevatim Air Base, and every other strategically significant node in Israeli territory. One missile, one launch, and every significant target in a country the size of New Jersey is gone. Now, multiply that capacity by the 1,000 missiles Iran just received. We are talking about a theoretical delivery capacity of 15,000 nuclear warheads. Iran has just received a nuclear arsenal that, in raw delivery capacity, exceeds the entire American strategic nuclear force by a factor of 10. The most revolutionary characteristic of the Sarmat, however, is its range geometry. With an 18,000-kilometer reach, it can strike any point on Earth from any launch position within Iran. But range alone is not the story. The Sarmat was specifically designed to approach its targets via trajectories that bypass the early warning and intercept architecture that the United States and its allies have spent decades and trillions of dollars building. American missile defense architecture, including THAAD, Aegis, and the ground-based mid-course defense systems in Alaska, was designed around the assumption that missiles would approach via the North Pole. The Sarmat can fly over the South Pole. It can approach from directions where no early warning radar coverage exists, along flight paths that the entire American defense architecture was never designed to address. Furthermore, the penetration aids package carried by each Sarmat makes interception a mathematical impossibility. Alongside its nuclear warheads, each missile carries a suite of decoys designed to mimic the radar signatures of real warheads, electronic jamming systems, and maneuvering re-entry vehicles that execute evasive maneuvers in the terminal phase. An intercept system attempting to engage an incoming Sarmat strike package must simultaneously discriminate between real warheads and decoys while tracking objects moving faster than any interceptor currently deployed, against a salvo of 1,000 Sarmats. The concept of missile defense ceases to have operational meaning. No system built, no system in development, and no system in the classified programs of the American defense establishment can intercept 1,000 simultaneously launched ICBMs. The physics, the mathematics, and the timeline simply do not allow it. Israel's Arrow-3 system, its highest tier of defense, could only engage a fraction of a single missile's warhead package. Against this new reality, Arrow-3 is not a defense, it is a gesture. The second question, haunting every intelligence agency, is how did Moscow execute the largest nuclear weapons transfer in history without triggering a Western interdiction response? It didn't happen through the kind of covert logistics Western agencies are trained to detect. It happened through a state-to-state strategic decision made at the highest level of the Russian government and completed before Washington could formulate a response. This transfer was not impulsive, it was a calculated strategic investment by Vladimir Putin. For the past 3 years, under sustained Western pressure over Ukraine, Moscow concluded that the rules-based international order had become an instrument of permanent Russian strategic disadvantage. Russia's response was patient and methodical. They identified that the single action that would most decisively reshape the global strategic environment in their favor was arming Iran. A nuclear-armed Iran, or more precisely, an Iran possessing the world's most advanced delivery systems, permanently consumes American strategic attention and resources. Every percentage point of American capacity absorbed by Iran is a percentage point unavailable for pressure on Russia. The logistics of moving 1,000 missiles was an operation of enormous complexity. It was executed through rail transport to the Caspian Sea coast, maritime transfer across the Caspian in Russian military vessels' waters, where no Western surveillance asset has access, and final delivery to hardened underground facilities across Iran. The operation was conducted under the cover of large-scale military exercises. Western satellites saw the movements, but analysts assessed them as exercise-related. By the time the discrepancy was identified, the missiles were already in place. This was not a collection failure, it was a decision-making failure. The signals were present, but there was an absence of political willingness in Washington to act on ambiguous early warning indicators that risked a direct confrontation with Russia. By the time confirmation was absolute, the window for interdiction had closed. This is the intelligence paradox authoritarian systems exploit. They act while democracies deliberate. Furthermore, the reception infrastructure in Iran had been prepared for years through a secret multi-year program. Iranian and Russian technical teams had been working together at classified facilities, ensuring that when the missiles arrived, Iran could place them on operational alert within days. Within 6 hours of the transfer confirmation, Israel issued its response, 11 words that have put the world on the edge of annihilation. Iran has 48 hours to stand down or face total destruction. This ultimatum is simultaneously understandable and strategically problematic. It is understandable because doing nothing in the face of 1,000 nuclear missiles is politically and psychologically impossible for any government. However, it creates a crisis timeline so narrow that rational deliberation becomes nearly impossible. We must ask, what does stand down actually mean? Iran cannot return 1,000 missiles in 48 hours. The logistics, disassembly, and verification would require months. Stand down, therefore, likely means a commitment to remove missiles from operational alert status, or at maximum, a commitment to strategic disarmament terms no Iranian government could accept without political collapse. Iran's response came within 3 hours. They recognize no ultimatum, and any military action against their territory will be met with a response calibrated to eliminate the source of the threat. When the 8-hour clock expires, Israel faces a choice with no good branch. If Israel acts militarily, it is initiating a strike against 1,000 missiles in hardened facilities dispersed across a massive territory. The strike package required would involve hundreds of aircraft sorties and American-supplied bunker-penetrating munitions. Even then, the survivability calculation is overwhelmingly favorable to Iran. These underground facilities, built to Russian engineering standards, can survive almost anything in Israel's conventional arsenal. Destroying them would require nuclear weapons. And the use of nuclear weapons by Israel pulls every nuclear power on Earth into an emergency posture. If Israel does not act when the clock expires, its red lines are permanently degraded, and every adversary in the region will receive the message that Israel can be deterred. The Samson option would be effectively neutralized. The crisis has also revealed the comprehensive failure of American deterrence. American strategic doctrine has been built for 80 years around the foundational guarantee that the cost of challenging American interests will always exceed the benefit. Last night, that framework failed structurally. Russia transferred these missiles despite American policy declaring it categorically unacceptable. The threatened consequences, sanctions, isolation, support for Ukraine carry no additional weight because they have already been largely implemented. The Emergency National Security Council session in Washington lasted 14 hours, yet every option presented carried unacceptable consequences. Military action against Russia is off the table because two nuclear superpowers do not fight direct wars. Striking Russian territory would risk a nuclear exchange, the one outcome American doctrine treats as absolutely impermissible. Expanded sanctions against Russia have negligible impact at this point. Diplomatic engagement with Iran requires Tehran to give up its most consequential strategic asset in exchange for relief from a country whose security guarantees have just been demonstrated to have limits. The Iranian calculation is simple. The missiles are more valuable than anything Washington can offer. Beyond the immediate 8-hour crisis, the world has entered a new strategic era. The post-World War II international order was built on American military primacy and nuclear non-proliferation. Both pillars have been struck simultaneously. American primacy has been challenged by the transfer of decisive capability to a regional proxy, a method of power projection that American doctrine was never designed to address. The message to every adversary is clear. Find the right partner, transfer the right capability, and the most powerful military in human history cannot stop you. The non-proliferation framework is now conceptually obsolete. A treaty designed to prevent states from developing nuclear weapons has no answer for a state that receives them as a gift. Moscow is watching this unfold with the satisfaction of a chess player who has won regardless of the opponent's next move. If the West responds militarily, American power is drawn into a catastrophic conflict that consumes its resources. If the West does not respond, the American-led order collapses through inaction. Beijing is also conducting its own assessment. They are observing the limits of American deterrence, and the results will inform Chinese decision-making regarding Taiwan and the South China Sea. If America cannot deter a Russian transfer to Iran, what does that imply about its ability to deter China? In the Gulf, states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are experiencing a strategic earthquake. Iran now possesses an arsenal of world historical proportions. Every Gulf state will likely accelerate their accommodation with Tehran, as the American security umbrella is now visibly insufficient. From Turkey to Pakistan to India, the strategic environment changed overnight. The world that existed before this transfer is gone. It ended not with a declaration, but with 1,000 missiles crossing a border in the darkness, watched by satellites whose data reached analysts too late to matter. What replaces it will be more dangerous, more multipolar, and more honest about the actual distribution of power. We are living in a world where strategic boldness has proven more decisive than alliance commitments and institutional frameworks. The specifications of the RS-28 Sarmat, its 18,000 kilometers range, its 15 warheads, its ability to bypass every early warning system are now the primary facts of our existence. Israel's clock is running down to a decision with no good branch. Washington is holding a failed deterrence framework. Moscow and Beijing are redrawing the future, and 7 billion human beings have just woken up in a world that is structurally and perhaps permanently more dangerous than it was 48 hours ago. What happens when the clock expires? Does Israel trigger the exchange that ends Middle Eastern civilization? Does it stand down and accept Iranian nuclear dominance? Or does the situation simply spiral through miscalculation and panic into the outcome every nuclear strategist has spent their career trying to prevent? These are the actual questions being asked in command rooms right now, and the answers will define the world your children inherit. Leave your most serious assessment in the comments below. Share this analysis with everyone who needs to understand the gravity of this moment. Subscribe to US Command Insight, because in a world that just became this dangerous, staying informed is no longer optional. Until the next update, stay sharp, stay ahead, and never look away from the truth, however brutal it turns out to be.